We are recording. We have attendees. So yeah, we're good to go.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the academic subcommittee. As authorized by the Governor's Emergency Executive Order issued on May 17, 2020, the West Contra Costa Unified School District will conduct the board academic committee meeting via video conference, teleconference until further notice.
Trustee Smith-Folds. I'm so sorry, Chair Smith-Folds. Sorry to interrupt you. The interpreter needs to be promoted first,
Yes,
so that she can translate the instructions too.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I didn't want you to go through the whole thing and then have to do it again.
No, that's good. Thank you so much.
Is she in? I'm trying to see where. Oh, she's already in with us, right?
She just needs to be interpreted or promoted as an interpreter. Does that mean that, the little globe icon?
We should be good to go now.
All right.
Sorry.
That's okay.
A little false start, and now we'll get to do it again.
Okay.
We gave enough time for Dr. Hurst to come in.
All right. Oh, Dr. Hurst is here. Okay, so let's go. We're going to go straight to the agenda. Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, okay? No changes. Okay. All right. Let's start again. All right, here we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the academic committee. As authorized by the Governor's Emergency Executive Order issued on March 17, 2020, the West Contra Costa Unified School District will conduct the board academic committee meeting via video conference or teleconference until further notice. This meeting will be streamed via Zoom. This meeting will provide public comment opportunities through the Zoom app or by the telephone. To indicate your desire to speak on an agenda item, raise your hand by clicking the appropriate icon in the Zoom app or by pressing *9 if accessing the meeting by phone. In order to be recognized to speak, you must be logged in with your first and last name, and your hand must be raised before public comment begins for an item. Due to the Brown Act, board members cannot discuss items that are not on the agenda and do not usually respond to items presented in public comment. Mr. Aurelio, may we please have roll call?
Yes, I just had to unmute. Trustee Smith-Folds.
Present.
Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy.
Present.
Excellent.
And then do we want to roll call our superintendent?
Dr. Hurst, Superintendent Hurst.
Hoorah, present.
All right.
Perfect. And then Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, if you wouldn't mind, if you could give us the land acknowledgement.
Absolutely, thank you. We recognize that we are presently on the lands of the Chochenyo, Muwekma, Karken, Ohlone peoples and acknowledge them as the first inhabitants of the land we currently occupy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy. That was crazy. Ms. Espinoza said meeting interpretation services are available via Zoom by clicking on the globe icon at the bottom of the screen. Choose your language option from the menu. All right, perfect. And then may we have approval of the agenda, please?
I move to approve the agenda as is.
Perfect. Seeing no dissension, agenda is approved. And Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, having time to look over the minutes on May 10th and May 24th, do you have any corrections?
I did not have any corrections. Thank you, Ms. Riverbank, for her work.
Thank you so much. Will you move that item for me, please?
Happy to. I move to adopt the minutes.
Perfect. And seeing no dissension, minutes are adopted. Mr. Aurelio, will you do me a favor and stop sharing your screen for a minute? Perfect. So I can see everybody. Okay. All right, we're good to go. And Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, if you'll take item 1D, please.
Absolutely. Good evening or good afternoon, everyone who's here with us. It is my great pleasure to introduce our new superintendent, Dr. Kenneth Hurst. Dr. Hurst is joining us. His last school district, he was superintendent of Othello in Washington. Before that, he worked in Oceanside, California, in Southern California. And now he will be joining us here for a long, long time. And even though he's been on the job for 3 weeks, it probably feels like 3 years. But it's really exciting to already see him in action. And what I've loved about his leadership so far is that he is working incredibly hard. He is an amazing individual with communication and with the relationships. And he's been meeting with so many different stakeholders in just 3 weeks, with probably a majority of them, which is really exciting. So we wanted to invite him here today just to give us some thoughts and words, obviously about academics specifically, but about anything that he would like to share 3 weeks into the job. And of course, to welcome him in the way that we always do in the academic subcommittee, with grace, humor, and of course, respect. Trustee Smith-Falls, anything else that you would like to add that I didn't mention?
Well, that was fantastic. So Dr. Hurst, we are going to give you a moment to speak to us. But first, I just want to see if there's any public comment on your welcome. So any public comment on your welcome. And then if not, we will let you take the floor and then we'll move on. So anybody out there in Zoom land, if you want to say hi to Dr. Hurst and welcome him, feel free to put your little hands up. No pressure. If not, you can do it throughout and when we go to the other part of public comment. Mr. Raylio, anybody?
I don't see any hands raised at the moment.
That's all right. Welcome, Dr. Hurst. I did it for everybody. So now, Dr. Hurst, if you would please just take a couple of minutes and tell us about yourself, tell us your vision for surrounding academics with our school district, and the floor is yours.
Absolutely. It's an honor to be here, and for everyone that's listening. I first always like to share my appreciation to the board of directors just for the opportunity to work in the district and for them selecting me as the new superintendent. So it is certainly an honor to be here. And as was shared, there is certainly a big vision. And I have been very clear with all the leaders across the district about some of the things that will happen over the next several years. And I'm really excited, and I'm excited about the opportunity to share with you. I think first and foremost, more than anything, is one of the things I've been sharing with leaders is the focus on the instructional core. And this fits right in line with the academic committee. One of the things I shared with the board of directors during my interview process was there's really only one way to raise student achievement at scale. And that is to focus on the instructional core, which is really making sure that our teachers are experts in teaching for our students, and then making sure that our students are engaged in rigorous and relevant curriculum and activities as well. And then the third piece is that curriculum leg, which really speaks to the relevancy of the curriculum as well. So that's going to really be the focus throughout the next several years. But one of the things I can share with you is I have been talking to a number of different stakeholders, and I've talked to classified members, almost all of them in the district, almost all teachers as well, except for teacher area 5. I've talked to every principal, every assistant principal, and then I'll be meeting with central office over the next several days. And really the messages have been, what are the strengths, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and what are the threats to the system? And everyone has really been transparent. And I would just say this, that it hasn't just been internal, it's been external as well. So meeting with external partners. Some of the biggest things that I've been hearing is support, that across the board, whether it's classified, our teachers or our principals, they feel like they need additional support and that they are not being adequately supported. When I talk to the principals, they really talk about instructional leadership, and they feel that that has been lacking over the past few years. When I talk to teachers, they talk about classroom size and supporting social emotional needs of students as well. Counselors talk about the ratios as well. So that's come up. And then support for classified staff has come up, especially I've had a lot of conversations with CSOs that has come up in the need for CSOs. Also, classroom aides have come up for classified as well. Grad tutors have come up as well, and the need to bring those positions back. There's a sense of I don't want to say weariness, but certainly when I have looked at everyone across the organization, I could see the tiredness on people's faces, and they are working hard. So I want to acknowledge that we have some really great educators across the board and great leaders, and they are working extremely hard. One of the things that is very obvious as well, that even though we're working hard, the data doesn't support that our students are where they need to be. So the reality is, I think we all know that we have a lot of work to do in our system. And with that, what's happening with these conversations is all these conversations is leading to us developing a strategic plan for the district. So at some point in late October, we'll be presenting the board and the community with a detailed plan that outlines, here are our issues, here's our recommendations moving forward, and we're going to have to select 2 to 3 priorities. And I think what I've been sharing with everyone is that we can't do everything at once, but certainly we can make some big top recommendations based on what we're seeing from the data, and then make our strategic plan based on that. So through all these conversations, we have been able to develop some priorities right now that's going to really help us move forward. So one of the pieces I just got finished talking about is strategic planning process. Our leaders have been asking for an instructional vision. So what should instruction look like for our kids in the classroom? What should it look like, feel like, and sound like? And what does educational equity look like, feel like, and sound like also in the classroom? So we'll be collaborating together to develop a shared instructional vision around equity for all of our students. We'll also do a refresh on our mission statement, and then looking at our core values. There'll also be a big conversation with our learning community around our graduate profile. And the graduate profile is just, we have to decide together what we want our students to know and what we want them to be able to do when they graduate. And all of this is part of the strategic planning process. Also, we know a priority from all these conversations is an audit, some sort of audit or analysis, and really it's an equity audit. And here we'll be looking at the entire system, because we know, one, based on conversations that we've had with FCMAT, that we have some issues that we need to address. And we need to see where the excess is in our system, and we need to address the excess. But then we also need to make sure that we put the right pieces in place, the right systems, the right support, so we can adequately support our buildings, so they can support the teachers and the staff, so they can support the students. So the equity audit will cover all areas in the organization, from our budget, our finances, to human resources, our operations. It'll cover even to the detail of how we master schedule, because that is an equity issue. So how are our school sites, our counselors, and our principals scheduling those kids into the classrooms, and who gets priority? So that will be a conversation that happens. We'll be looking at the LCAP as well. And we'll be looking at the processes that we use for the LCAP document. So there's a lot happening with that equity audit. It will cover systems and processes. It will cover, like every single department, it will cover demographics. So things like attendance, suspensions, expulsions, also grad rates will be covered. Academics will be covered, and then perceptions, which is the conversations I'm having. I think another piece that will happen as well, that really is a direct outcome from my conversations, is how do we adequately support our buildings? And we're not sure what that looks like, but we're going to be talking to people across our system, from all of our classified members to our certificated members and our managers as well. And we'll be asking some questions because we want to get it right. We just don't want to put people in a certain spot. We want to put the right people in the right spots to best support our kiddos. Another priority that has come out of those conversations has been communication. And really, how do we best communicate internally and externally with our stakeholders and making sure that they're well informed, not just about activities that's happening across the district, but also about their students and how they are doing. So one of the things that we'll be bringing to the district is this concept of a district-wide scorecard. And the district-wide scorecard is simply making sure that everyone internally and externally, they know how their kids are doing on a regular basis. And then we get to decide what that frequency is like. So whether that's on a 6-week basis or whether it's on an 8-week basis, we will have a district-wide scorecard. Another priority has been the chief academic officer. We know that Mr. Aurelio is leaving. Sad to see him go, but we have been facilitating a very collaborative process that involves labor union groups, students, parents, teachers, and leaders in the process. So we're excited about that new individual, whomever that's going to be. And then finally, I think I will share with you fall reentry planning. I'll also be talking about this during my real first board meeting on Wednesday during the superintendent report. But we have outlined some groups, and some groups are going to be helping us to plan. And this is based on a framework from Harvard that really talks about here's the best way to bring kids back to a reimagined environment. So what we're doing is we're not using a top-down approach, we're using a very collaborative approach, which is really my style. So I shared a lot. There's a lot going on behind the scenes, so conversations, but a lot of hard work going on with a lot of people. I would say also I'm really proud of the work. Well, I'm proud of our board of trustees and their passion for kids, but also proud of the work that we're doing behind the scenes with our board governance workshops, and those have been amazing as well. So a lot going on, but I think I'll just share, I'm very excited to be here as the new superintendent and look forward to working with everybody and really joining the conversations in the academic committee. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. What you were talking, when you were talking, what it reminded me of, I'm a huge Marvel fan. Guardian of the Galaxy, you know, when Quill he grabs the Infinity Stone, but then it reaches out and says, grab my hand, because he can't hold it all himself. I think that that's what you're describing as our district. Like when you're talking to the stakeholder, you're telling someone else, grab your hand. So that energy and that work and everything can be distributed among all of us, because it really is, you know, people say it all the time, but people don't act on it. It does take a village. It cannot be one person. It cannot be one group. It cannot be one organization. It can't just be one site. We're 50 plus sites. So we really have to have a centering anchor, and then that grabs hold to the work and then says, grab my hand. So welcome to being Peter Quill and our Guardian of the Galaxy, as we guardian and we guard these kids. That's literally what we're doing. So you reach out, we will grab your hand, and I'm sure that we can all share that energy and do the best to hold on to that vision. So that's what came to my head, because again, I watched Marvel last night. I'm going to share my screen, and this is because, see if I can get it together, because we have someone that we have to say goodbye to, and we don't want to, but we have to. And Mr. Aurelio, we do it the right way here. So hold on, let me get through this ad, honey. Hold on 1 second. This was supposed to already be queued up, but you know, things happen. Here we go. Wait, do I have to push the button? Bear with me, people. Here we go. So that's for you. Trustee Gonzalez Hoy, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith-Folds. Well, as Superintendent Dr. Hurst mentioned, unfortunately today is Mr. Aurelio's last academic committee meeting, and he has been spending quite a bit of time with us since we got elected and we started this new committee. So we just wanted to take a moment and say thank you to you, Mr. Aurelio, for all your work, not just in our committee, but everything you've been doing in WCCUSD the last few years, but specifically this year, because you jumped into your position in one of the hardest years in education. So you have gone above and beyond, and on behalf of the district and our colleagues, we just want to say thank you, because you have made quite a bit of difference. I'm sad that Berkeley stole you from us, but maybe in a year or two we'll steal you back. Who knows? But you're not too far, so I know you'll stay in touch, and we'll be able to reach out if anything goes on. But thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And I'll pass it back to you, Chair Smith-Foltz, if you'd like to add anything to that.
Thank you, Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy. Mr. Aurelio, thank you so much for everything that you've done for the academic committee. We appreciate you. We see you in high regards, and we just want to say thank you. And it really is hard to say goodbye. That is the most appropriate and Blackest way to say goodbye to you, sir, to say that we appreciate you. It is a tearjerker. If I would have let it go the whole 3 minutes, we all would have been in tears, because it's just the best song to say you will be missed, you were appreciated while you were here, and we know we'll see you on the other side. If you get tired, and listen, if you're from Berkeley, relax. But if you get tired of like fake bacon, turkey bacon, or tofu, or whatever they do in Berkeley, and like just come on back home, come on back to WCCUSD, and you will always be appreciated for everything that you did. Anybody want to say thank you and goodbye to Mr. Aurelio? You can raise your hand. If not, we know that we know that you were appreciated, and you were very much. We thank you very much for all that you've done for WCCUSD. And we know it wasn't easy, but we know you really did your 100%, and we thank you for that. And we look forward to staying in touch with you. We are now at public comment. This is for anything not on the agenda, for items not on the agenda. If you have any public comment, go ahead and raise your hand. If you need a minute, you can take a minute. We will kind of take public comment throughout. So if your hand is up, we will let you go ahead and come on and talk to us. All right. Yes, sir.
So sorry to interrupt. I was wondering if you wanted to give Mr. Aurelio a minute to say something. Not to put him on the spot or anything.
No, first of all, you are absolutely correct, sir. I was completely raised in a barn. What was I doing? I forgot. It's just my manners just went out the window. I'm so sorry. I've been out in the heat today. So Mr. Aurelio, please, if you have anything.
I will keep it brief, because we have a lot to cover in this last academic agenda. It's been a pleasure working with you both on this committee. I think I've had the most fun on this committee throughout this year. You both have made me laugh tremendously through this work, even though there's times I wanted to cry. Laughter helps that process. And to those who are in attendance and panelists, I have a tremendous team here in West Contra Costa, and you are all in good hands with those who are already here. So the directors and coordinators, and really the Ed Services team, they've done a lot of the heavy lifting. I'm not going to take credit for all the work they've done. They've propped me up tremendously. And so Dr. Hurst, you have a strong team. I know you have this position to fill, and I've read through all those candidates. I know you're going to find a really strong person to come in and support you in the work that's ahead, and to support the team. Like I said, I'm proud of the work we did this year around race and equity. I think that we dove right in, and I know it had its hiccups along the way, but that is work that is always going to be messy, but necessary, and it needs to continue. And so I am looking forward to hearing what happens next and what continues for West Contra Costa and the kids. Of course, I will have everyone's phone numbers, and we'll be calling folks to make sure if there are things that are happening in West Contra that I want to borrow and steal for Berkeley, I will. Why always, we can always replicate things and, see how things are done. And same, and, I really do mean it that I am not that far away. I'm literally right next door. So I wish everyone luck and a tremendous summer. I'm kind of sad I'm not going to fully see the summer program out, because I think it's going to be amazing for our kids here in West Contra. The amount of schools that'll be open in person and providing services for our students. So that's it. I will keep it there. And I think we can probably go to public comment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aurelio. I really appreciate it. And you have enough room to where you could give us a little dance towards the end. Don't forget, I remember you dance. I remember you told me. We are ready for public comment. Do we have anyone out there?
Yes, Zalan Harrison. I'm gonna, let's see, find the right button. Zalan, you can unmute now, I think.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Good to see y'all. Welcome, Dr. Harrison. Bye, Ruben, you the guy. I just had a comment. Dr. Harrison, I heard you talk about strategic plans and equity, bringing in the, with that, are you going to evaluate the district and all that? I'm not using the right words, but I hope that you didn't mention parents, and especially Black parents. We have the product for the purpose of all you guys being here. And I think that taking care of your parents, you're going to get better students. Because if the parents feel that they're involved and they're connected, the students kind of pick up. I have 8 and they follow me like 8 little ducks. And my oldest is 37. And he still follows me too. So if you take care of the parents, the children will buy into an educational system where we can have productive citizens. The parents in this district have been ignored, we're disrespected, especially Black parents. And they're always trying to put us in a framework that doesn't fit. I think being inclusive and evaluating how our children are being educated, you're on the right track, but I just didn't hear enough of the parent participation because it's a relationship to get this work done. So that's it, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Harrison. Dr. Hurst, if you want to take a minute to respond to that, that's fine, just to make sure that that message is out there about your plan around inclusion of parents.
Absolutely. I really thank you for sharing that. And I was trying to remember everything that I should say, and I inadvertently left out parents, but I'll share this with you. That certainly is my philosophy and belief, as Trustee Smith-Folds was saying, that it certainly takes a village. I think parents, I know that parents are a big part of that conversation, but also you didn't hear me say students, but one of the things that I have been very clear about as well is that student voice matters to me, parent voice matters as well. I have been looking for opportunities to involve students. I have talked to our student trustees and also the student council, but also looking for more ways to talk to our students. The same thing with our parents. It's going to take everybody joining in and hearing all the voices for us to really be able to do this work. And I think just to kind of echo what Trustee Smith-Folds said is, I can't do it on my own as a superintendent. And to be very honest with you, we can't do it internally on our own. It is going to take our parents. It is going to take our business partners and university officials. So I really appreciate you sharing that. It is certainly part of my belief and philosophy. So I will be reaching out to parent groups.
Thank you so much for that. Zalan, I hope that, Ms. Harrison, I hope that helped give you a little bit of comfort, knowing that Dr. Hurst is very much keeping the centering on the students, which means the parents. So it's one of those things that you cannot have one without the other. And the board of trustees completely and 100% trust that Dr. Hurst will do as he said he has, that he's going to do. We are ready to move on if there is no further hands up. And if you have one up, go ahead and pop it up now. If not, we'll let you pop it up on the next item and you can talk about that item, or, you know, we're cool going back and forth. All right, so Mr. Yes.
No, no hands up, so I think we're good for the next item.
Perfect. So we are on 2A, Special Education Local Plan. Mr. Aurelio, we are ready.
So with us on panel, we have Kristen Hardy and Steve Collins. Let's see if they're there. I see them. There they are. And Kristen, are you sharing the deck?
I will share screen, yes.
So I'm going to turn it over to you too.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us here today. So as I am very new in the district, and this is my first time through the local plan, and Steve has done this once or twice in the past, I know that when we spoke the last time, you both had wanted the ability to kind of ask some questions and have kind of a historical perspective. So Steve can provide some of that institutional knowledge if there's questions. So we will get right to it. Okay. So the state requires that every district or every SELPA produce what's called a local plan, which is sort of a description of all the services that we provide as a district, how we serve every student in our system with an IEP, and then how the funds are allocated in a manner to ensure that those services are provided and continue. So the local plan is comprised of a couple of different parts. There's a main part that's done once every 3 years, and that actually went to the board in June of 2020. And so we are under that main portion of the plan for 3 years. But then every year, the SELPA has to produce an annual budget plan and an annual services plan. So this year is just an adoption of the two smaller sections of the plan. And so that is what I will be presenting to you today. So the need for the local plan came about in back in 1998 when the funding formulas for special education shifted. And so the state of California wanted to be able to monitor the way that local districts were ensuring that those special education services were provided to students. And so that was sort of the initiation of the local plan. So it's only been in effect for about the past 22 years. So the purpose of the plan, as I mentioned, is to assure access to special education related services for all students with exceptional needs residing within the geographic areas served by the plan. So for us, that would be all of the West Contra Costa Unified School District, because we are what's called a single district SELPA. So we both have the state SELPA organization, and then we are also the school district. And then to ensure compliance with all the state and federal codes and statutes. The plan for a single district of sufficient size and might include multiple districts or include multiple districts and county office of education. And so again, we are a single district SELPA. So this page, I've actually attached into the agenda. You have actually the entire plan, which includes the first part is just the contracts and certification or contacts and certifications. The second, that section B, governance and administration, is that large portion of the plan that was actually approved last year. Section C in the state's great wisdom doesn't actually exist yet. It's under construction. It will be rolled out in the 21-22 school year, and then will go into effect in the 22-23 school year. That will be the first time that we write to the section C. So the parts that I bring forward today are section D and E, the annual budget and services plan. And then there are some attachments that go with it that give more detail. And so part of our process for developing our plan is to bring that forward to a public hearing so that the public can see what that plan looks like. So we posted that to the school sites, to our district website back on May 19th. And then we'll come to the board for the public hearing portion this Wednesday, and then we'll come back to you for final approval at the second board meeting in June, and then we need to submit to the CDE by June 30th in order to comply with our requirements. And it is a plan moving forward, looking into the next fiscal year. So some things that you see included in our budget plan, we have to look at our administrative costs. So what does it cost us to run our programs? Then services to students with severe and low incidence disabilities, services to students with non-severe disabilities, supplemental aids and services to meet the individual needs of students in the general education setting, our regionalized operations services and direct instructional supports by program specialists, the use of special education property taxes, which for us does not apply because we are an ADA-based district. That would apply if we were a basic aid district. And this plan does not capture, it's not all inclusive. It's really focusing on those portions of our funding that are tied directly to state grants and the federal grants is where you're going to see a little more detail. So when we're looking at those portions of this plan that go into a little more detail, the funding sources that we're looking at are Assembly Bill 602, which is our state aid to special education, then the 2 federal IDEA grants, one for the K-22 system and one for preschool. Then there's also a state infant and toddler grant, and then we have both the state and the federal mental health grants for special education. And then as a district, we also draw on other revenue sources, including the Department of Rehabilitation, Workability, and Medi-Cal billing. So those are all by nature of the student populations we serve, additional funding resources that can support us to build out our programming. And then the remainder, what is not included in those above would be the contributions from the general fund. And so, there's been a lot spoken about in the public recently about the contribution to special education from the general fund. And of course, Dr. Wold has discussed in many of the budget sessions, the contribution to special education. As kind of a context, state districts across the state of California are averaging a general fund contribution anywhere between 60 and 70%. So and that has been rising over time. So only 5 years ago, it was about 50%. So the cost of special education is increasing per student. For next year, our projections based on what you'll see today are running at about 70.6% contribution from the general fund. And that has been a major point of state lobbying. And when we had our Ledge Day recently that Trustee Reckler participated with the special education in our CAC panel, that was a big discussion with our legislators, is trying to more fully fund special education. So here you see kind of the contributions that are estimated currently. And so this is all based on the budget, as we've been talking about with Dr. Wold, that is kind of evolving. But as of the moment in time when we took the snapshot for our local plan for next year, this is what we are anticipating as our revenues. So the Assembly bill for state aid is about $19 million. Our federal IDEA contribution for Part B, K-22 is about $6.4 million. Our federal IDEA Part C for preschool is about $83,000. These two together, so when we are identified as significantly disproportionate, it's 15% of these two grants that get sequestered to put toward our plan for correcting the significant disproportionality. Our toddler and infant, there's not currently a contribution there. State mental health is about 1.8 million. This is an increase over the past couple of years, which is great. And one of the ways that we are hiring additional school psychologists this next year to provide services. And then the federal is about 325,000. Those other revenues, the Department of Rehab, Workability, and Medi-Cal is about 626,000. And then you can see there's that 70.6% of the overall budget for the department is reflected in the local contribution. And our special education students are first and foremost general education students. So they are fully participating in general ed programming. And that brings us to the overall projected budget for the department of about $94 million for next year. And that's, again, about equivalent to most districts where the cost of educating a student with an IEP is approximately 3 times on average that of a student in general education. So that covers the financial end. And now I'm going to shift to kind of the services plan. That is how we utilize those funds that we just talked about. And so our services plan must describe the services, including related services, the locations where these services will be provided. And that would include our alternative schools, charter schools, opportunity day schools that are operated by the district, community day schools operated by the County Office of Education, and non-public schools. So for us as a district, we do not currently have any opportunity day schools, and we don't access county programs. We provide all services to our students within our school district, with the exception of a few students that attend non-public schools. And I think that's really exceptional and really speaks to the district's long commitment to serving all of our students within our district, that we are serving all but I think 40 students out of 4,000 within our district, which is remarkable. This description of services covers the full continuum from least restrictive, being speech or low incidence supports, vision, deaf, hard of hearing, occupational therapy, services of students that are otherwise all in general education, to those students who have some resource support, our full inclusion programming and counseling enriched programs, to then students who are spending more of their day in special education settings, mild, moderate, and our extensive support needs students. If we had those county or community day schools, they would kind of reside just beyond the district's services, and then moving into non-public schools and with the most extensive or intensive programming for students in residential placements. So as I mentioned, we currently have approximately 4,200 eligible students in special education. And again, for our district is very much following the trend across the nation right now, where we are seeing an increase in the identification of students with IEPs since COVID. And there's probably a number of different reasons for that. We're seeing approximately a 4% increase right now in the number of students with IEPs. We serve students from birth to 22. We have 36 different educational services that we are providing currently across 78 campuses and programs. And we have approximately a staff of 800 certificated and classified staff supporting our students. And the budget all reflects that programming. So just thinking about the approval process for our local plan, we get approval from our SELPA's governing body, which is the district. We obtain signatures, including from the county superintendent. This document has gone to our community advisory committee for review and discussion already. And then it goes to you all for review and before we submit to the CDE for final approval. And I just wanted to provide just a little bit of context. I know this slide is small, but typically we would receive the state template in December and begin work on that. This year, we received the state template in March. And so we've been on a very, very compressed timeline to get this, this work all completed and brought to the board and community. So, and with that is open to any questions. And Steve can answer any historical questions.
Thank you so very much. Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, let's start. Ms. Hardy, oh, I was about to ask if you stopped sharing your screen. I like to see everybody's face. Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, let's go questions, public comment, and then back to our board comments, okay? Dr. Hurst, please feel free to jump in with any questions as well. We just kind of do it in a circle. Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Smith-Holtz. Thank you, Ms. Hardy, for the presentation. Mr. Collins, so great to see you. I'm glad you didn't really retire and you're still around with us supporting. So thank you for being here. I have 3 questions, Ms. Hardy, and thank you for the presentation. I did review the documents, and all of our SPED documents are always pretty lengthy, so I appreciate that as well, and detailed. So my first question is just more on the template. So the section C, which is going to be a new piece, what is that going to entail? Annual assurance support plan. Is that kind of going more into detail about like the
I'm actually going to
accountability?
let Mr. Collins respond to that question, as he's been
Okay.
participating in those state SELPA meetings.
What in the local plan, there's 21 assurances. So what the state is going to require that we speak to each one of the assurances that they are in place. And the other piece that's going to be added onto it is how those assurances overlap with the LCAP. And that was the whole purpose of adding the section C. It was supposed to come into place 2 years ago. But they have put it on hold because they just completely redid the local plan template, and they felt SELPA should first deal with the new local plan template before they added any new pieces. So it's sort of a bridge between the special ed local plan and the LCAP, and how the two mix together. And we serve all students, so all special ed students first as general ed and then as special ed, and how the two programs are working as one. There's some discussion at one point to move special ed at some point into LCAP in the distant future.
Got it. Thank you so much for that explanation. That makes sense. My second question, Ms. Hardy, you mentioned the increase of identification of our students since COVID, and we've had an increase of 4%. Could you maybe share with us maybe what you think of why we're seeing that trend a little bit more, and if it's because of having to do the process online, would we redo the process for students who are identified this year, next year?
It's a really good question. So part is because we were very slow to exit students out of services. So often in a typical year, you might have a number of students that are just maybe speech only students, articulation, fluency kinds of things that we would typically be exiting from services in a year. But due to the challenges with completing a comprehensive assessment and truly evaluating the impact of what had previously been the disability within the school setting and ensuring progress on goals, we've been very slow and careful to make those exits. Also for some students in RSP as well, we really want to see how they're going to come back and integrate back into the classroom before we make those decisions. With regard to, I think the department, the speech therapists and school psychologists in particular have done just a stellar job to try to balance, the need to identify students even through this time period with, some of the challenges with that identification process. So I think the majority is really due to just not exiting all the students that we typically would exit in a year. But parents are also seeing their kids in an educational setting in a different way than they have in the past. And so it's bringing forward some really interesting conversations and, concerns by parents about how their students are engaging in school. So we're trying to really be very thoughtful and mindful about engaging in that dialogue carefully with parents and bringing forward data that the team can all look at together to make the best decisions for students.
Thank you for that. Makes total sense. And that made me add another question that I will ask. So I'll ask 4 questions. My next one is about, you have over 800 staff, which is great. But every year, obviously, we have some openings in the SPED department. And we know that there's a shortage of SPED teachers and support providers. And this year, it seems like it's exacerbated, right? So I wanted to ask you, do we have a lot of openings, and has the relationship between SPED and HR helped this year to hire teachers earlier? Do you feel like we're going to be fully staffed next year?
I'm hoping that we'll be fully staffed. Absolutely, we've been working very closely with HR. I feel like we've streamlined the process a great deal. Things are moving quickly. Right now, we are very close to fully staffed. We typically experience some late resignations in June, and so that will really kind of define a lot. Plus, we're always watching our numbers, and we're tight. Our caseloads are tight. So our hope is certainly that we'll be very close. And we've recruited some very, very strong teachers this year, and we continue to develop those teacher pipelines. Our residency program is hugely important. The ability to grow and develop our paraprofessionals into teachers. Those are the best special education teachers because they've really, grown up through the system. They know what they're getting into. They're, tend to be really dedicated and strong teachers. So we're very, very lucky to have that relationship with Cal State East Bay. So I'm really hopeful, but to your point, it's always tricky, and speech therapists are, probably the most difficult to recruit. Again, we're recruiting well this year, and we do have strong relationships with some staffing agencies that support us with really strong staff when we're not able to, hire our own. So I think we'll be in good shape in the fall, but it's always an ongoing process.
Sure. Thank you. My last question is, and the rest are just comments, Chair Smith-Folds, is, this has always been this way, but I've heard about this a lot this year, about when a student's identified as SPED and goes through the process. Sometimes there's this negative stigma that is assumed sometimes by families and even staff, for good or bad. And sometimes that causes a student to not get the services they need. I was wondering if we have any plans, or if this already happens and I just don't know about it, to provide some level of information and education about the services, to kind of remove some of that stigma, which it shouldn't be there, right, at all, but exists. I was wondering if that's incorporated at all in the plan for the next few years, to help families understand that it's not a negative thing for a student to get SPED services, or even staff too, right? Sometimes students don't even get referred because of that. I was wondering if there's any of that in the works.
I think in past years, my understanding is there's been some parent workshop series that are supported through our parent liaison and our department. And they did not happen this year with the closures, or they happened in smaller number, but absolutely, I think that's really important. We have heard that through several different arenas that there is strong interest to bring that back. And I would agree with you that I have been in conversations and spaces where special education is very complicated, and sometimes I think it's multiple conversations and multiple messaging. We also have worked really hard to develop some one-page brochures that make so that to help our parents be better consumers, so that they can really kind of look and see what's the differences between different programs and services, and to give them sort of the vocabulary that will be helpful for them when they come into IEP meetings, so they can truly be partners at the table, and can ask questions and gather information that will be helpful for them to really work collaboratively with the school on behalf of their children.
Thank you, Ms. Hardy. I appreciate that. Chair Smith-Folds, that's my last question.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Collins, for joining Ms. Hardy today for the historical knowledge. I have to say, for me, one of the most intimidating things is an IEP meeting. As a teacher, going for an IEP meeting with my own child, I felt completely lost. Special education has its own vocabulary, it has its own acronyms, it has its own legalities about it. Everything is so specialized that, again, I'm in this profession, and sitting at that table having someone else tell you about your child is daunting. It's overwhelming. So if we could do anything to increase parent confidence, if we had, a list of advocates that could go in with you, anything that we need to be able to ensure that when parents are sitting at that table in a very emotionally overwhelming state, that there's someone centered that can say, okay, you go through your emotions. I'm here listening. I'm listening for the services. I'm listening for this. I'm listening for that. I have to say that I did have someone sit with me and my husband when we were doing the IEP, because I was breaking down in tears. I was trying to figure out, because you're sitting there trying to make sure your child is going to be able to walk across that graduation stage, and they're going to receive a diploma, and they're going to be set up for success. And it's daunting when you hear, well, they 2 grade levels behind or 3 grade levels behind, or you're going to need this or they need that. So Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, forgive me, this is not a question. It is just a statement because it is very, very personal. And I think that we also need a lot of teacher education. When you see that IEP, that as a teacher, it can be very overwhelming. Well, what's my role? What am I supposed to do? What's the accountability on my part? What's the liability on my part? Because you hear, lawsuit here and lawsuit there, and it's very, very, it's hard to kind of digest it all. So I would really want it to be a both and. Increase the parent education around special ed and IEPs and every program they offer. Also increase the teacher education, and that includes our substitutes, the education around special ed and IEPs and how we present ourselves to our students and our parents, because it is very, very hard. I had something up. I wanted to make sure, because I think I remember this acronym correctly, but I wanted to make sure. Individual Disability Education Act, IDEA, is that right? Okay, good. I wanted to make sure that I got that right. How much would it take for special ed in this district to be totally funded? You said we're not totally funded. What's the number? Do you have an estimate of what that number would be? We're at 94 million, right? What would be the number?
Funded by state, federal?
Everybody. Your wish list is set, like special ed fully funded. What is special ed funded?
That's such a big question. This could be such a big wish list. I don't know an exact number. I think it's always a balancing act, and we've got to constantly look at the way we're delivering services, and it's a balance through so many.
But they've never been fully funded, correct?
No, so the IDEA, Steve, help me with the number. I think they've never been funded over 40%, and I think right now we're down in like 20%.
We're less than that. Currently, special ed, when IDEA came in, federal government promised 40% funding. The highest we've ever been is 18. We're currently federally funded 7.5%. State provides 25%. Districts, state provides 25%, the feds provide about 7.5%, 8%, and the state average right now is that the local contribution is 67%. And West Contra is right in the ballpark between 67 and 70%. So the feds have never met the mandate. With the Biden administration, there is going to be a significant increase in federal funding. That is going to move forward the most we've ever seen, but we're only talking maybe a 3-4% increase from the feds, but that is the most we've ever received in the history of IDEA.
So we're supposed to be around 40, they're around 6 or 7, and they're going to give you about 3, so that makes it around 10, but you're still not at 40.
That's correct. And every year there's federal legislation putting through to go to the 40%. And that has not happened, but under the Biden administration, it looks more hopeful that IDEA will receive more funds every year. That was one of his goals.
Okay, thank you so much for that. My final question is, can you speak a little bit about the disproportionality that we have in our district specifically? I know that it's in every district, but to our district, what are we doing to curtail that disproportionality that we have with African-American students, specifically males, getting titled special ed when it may not be accurate, or we're overrepresenting African-American males in the special ed program?
So every year we get our disproportionality data. It's always based, there's 2 different calculations. One is based 2 years in the rears, one is based 1 year in the rears. So when you're 1 and 2 for one of those, when you're disproportionate, we develop what's called the special education plan. And that looks at the students already in special ed and what do you do to improve their outcomes. So we are disproportionate in a number of areas, including our 4-year graduation rate, our dropout rate, which kind of go hand in hand, our suspension rate, our English language arts achievement, our math achievement, and then our one area where we're out in terms of identification. So they look at overall identification by ethnic group and then by category. So we're actually not over identifying in total for any subgroup, but we are over identifying for African American students as emotionally disturbed. And you are correct that of those students, so currently our current data is 23 students, African American students identified as emotionally disturbed within the district, which is really quite a small number, but it's also a pretty small number for that category in general for all subgroups. And it is majority males for sure when you look at the gender distribution within that. So we have our significant disproportionality plan, which is where we're doing those deep dives into the 4 elementary schools, because what we found is that the precursors, when we go all the way back and we really look at those students' history, it begins in the elementary school. And so there are some common characteristics for those students. And so for each of those common root causes, we have put something in place to try to intervene earlier. And so what we're hoping is at the end of this 1-year cycle, by deeply and intensively putting these components in place, we'll see a lower referral rate for special education for the target students and for these 4 campuses in general. We have also now received our 2nd year, because it's always like you hear in December and then you hear again the next December. So before you even put your first plan in place, you're already hearing about your 2nd year. So we're in again for the ED and African American students. So we'll be doing another plan starting this fall. And then our special education plan is really looking at improving the outcomes for students already with IEPs. So we have both. We're looking both at preventing and then also improving the outcomes. So includes a lot of different components: mental health, literacy, PBIS, social emotional learning, parent engagement is a huge, huge component of all of these plans, and teacher building culturally responsive pedagogy into the classroom and really supporting teachers to understand who their students are coming to them and looking at the whole child.
So I really appreciate, especially the last part where I heard teacher training, teacher training, teacher training, teacher training. Like, it has to be at the forefront, because you have to know who's in front of you and then how you connect to that person in front of you, especially a little person, how you connect to that little person, and then how there's no implicit bias. We have to be very clear about the implicit bias that we bring to the classroom, and then how it has to be, I want that to be the last thing you think, is that it's an emotional disturbance issue. You know what I mean? Like, did you go through every other single thing before you hit that? Because it's real hard to drop a label once, because you've been in schools. Once one teacher talks about child A, then that kid has that label all the way up to 5th grade or 6th grade. And then, you know what I mean? And it just may be a temporary immaturity thing. You may be immature. You may have something else that's a very clear, fixable situation. So I don't want a tag to follow or a title to follow a kid. And it's just teacher training, teacher training, teacher training. That's all I have. Mr. Aurelio, did you want to say something? And then we have public comment.
I was just going to say that the disproportionality thing was not a special ed issue, it was a general ed issue. And really that it's general ed is where it all begins. And the other thing with funding, all our special ed kids are also general ed kids. And so they're funded via general ed as well. So, when we think about encroachment and things like that, you got to remember all our kids are general ed kids. That's where they start. That's where they are. And funding goes to them in that capacity too. And it's not strictly a special ed component. So
I think
you're welcome, Kristen.
Mr. Aurelio, that's something that really needs to be kind of brought forward, and I don't think it's brought forward enough. I think that if we keep people separate, then they will stay separate. But if it is a education issue, you know what I mean? Like, I have always thought that every child needs an IEP. Every child needs an IEP. I think every adult needs an IEP, but every child definitely needs an individual education plan, because we all really do learn differently. We really, really do. And we have to have that kind of understanding. So Mr. Rayleo, thank you for that. And if
and I would just add too, as you are both teachers as well, Trustee Smith-Folds and Trustee Gonzalez, you are also special education teachers. All our general teachers are special education teachers. Just like every teacher in this district should be working with English learners and English learners. So.
Oh, you preaching on your last day. Go ahead, Mr. Rayleo.
Well, you know, just saying.
I'm here for it.
I have to say, you know, we do these leadership meetings. I have never, and I've been in 3 districts now. All 3 have been in significant disproportionality. As I arrived, they got identified. This is the first district where there's so much participation across, you know, all segments of our system. And I think that really goes to Ruben's point, that there's really a deep recognition that we care for all of our kids, and that our kids need different things, and that we need to put our best thinking together about how to support every child where they are and move every child, you know, forward to some, you know, common goals. And so it's really, I was on the phone with our state consultant a couple weeks ago, kind of just talking about progress. And she said she was blown away. She doesn't talk to districts where there's so many people sitting in that room talking about kids and the outcomes. So something to be really proud of, I think.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Hardy. Mr. Rayleo, do we have any public comment?
I see one hand at the moment. Zalon Harrison, you should be able to unmute. Let's see, give it a shot. Did it work? Sorry, let's try it again. All right, now you should be able to.
Okay, hello, good evening, and thank you, trustees. Both of y'all was said a lot of stuff I wanted to say, so thank you for that. And Kristen, thank you, because she has really done a lot of work to engage the Black parents, and I appreciate that because of the over-identification of Black boys. And I made a recommendation for the teachers with hand-in-hand parenting. I'll give you the new contact for that, because they have a way with, I would like our educators, like Trustee Foe said, the educators, the over-identification is because the special ed has become aware to put somewhere to put the kids. But I think if the educators understand the culture of the kids, like she said, I think we will get better outcomes. There has been Kristen has done a lot of good work. So I just want to thank you for that. And thank you for really listening to the parents and really putting it all in perspective. You didn't make it complicated. And also my daughter's IEP over Zoom was wonderful, because they made a slideshow and they made her really important, and it didn't make me feel confused, overwhelmed. I understood everything. So I don't know if that's y'all new approach, but it was a wonderful approach. And that was the first IEP I felt inclusive with. And I got to keep the slideshow. And it was all about me, and more really my daughter. It was all about her, but me being included as a parent. So keep looking for new ideas and look forward to doing my work.
Thank you so very much. Okay, love a slideshow. That was really, I think that's really innovative. That's really creative. And please multiply that. Having a parent having a slideshow to show where their child is now and then where their child's going to be, I think is very, very good. It keeps the parent engaged in the goal setting for the child. It keeps the child engaged. It also gives you, you know, they always say, take a picture, because you're never going to stay here. You're going to move. And just to see how far you have come in a year, 180 days is a long time. It's a momentous time when you started out not speaking in class to where you're now able to raise your hand with confidence. That Ms. Harrison, that's an example that was given to me about my daughter. She started out not raising her hand at all, and now she's fully engaged, and that's a goal. A goal was for her to be able to advocate and use her voice, and one way to to assess that was, how is she raising her hand? Is she engaging into the class? Is she engaging in the classroom? So Ms. Hardy, I want a slideshow too. So just to know.
I will give you a slideshow.
Thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. Again, Mr. Collins, thank you for coming. And Ms. Hardy, let me just say that I really appreciate you asking Mr. Collins to come today. I think that one of the things that the district needs to do is it needs to continue to engage in the people who have already done the work and put in the years, because we do not have to reinvent the wheel. We can really have some historical knowledge in that, and we can kind of take off. So there are people, even when I'm looking at this call, there are people who have been in this district for such a long time, and they have a real sense of historical knowledge about this particular subject, but also all the subjects that we have in our district. So let's keep engaging. I'm going to call out people like Ms. Smith. Let's keep engaging people like, let's keep engaging Mr. Cooper. Let's keep engaging Principal McCormick. Let's keep engaging Ms. Shields, Ms. Huey. Let's keep engaging these people, because they are carrying that knowledge forward. If I didn't call your name, don't feel bad. I still saw you. Thank you for showing up, and we appreciate you. And we know that you have such a voice and a power to this district. So thank you, Mr. Collins. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Hardy. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing this presentation again on Wednesday. I appreciate you. Mr. Gonzalez-Hoy, are you saying bye, or you want to say something?
Yeah, I have comments.
Okay.
If it's okay.
Oh, I forgot about comments. Oh, listen. Mr. Radio, it's the last day. We're just winging it. Okay. I was wondering, I was like, what is he doing? Like, what does this mean? Like, is he talking to somebody? Like, what is happening?
I was pointing to Demetra on my screen. I'm
Well,
like,
you know, I thought you were trying to dance a little bit. I was like, oh, here we go. We've already started before even the end. Okay, Mr. Gonzalez-Hoy, please go ahead with your comments. Forgive me.
No, I'll make it very brief. Thank you. I really just wanted to give my appreciation to Ms. Hardy and your staff, of course, Mr. Collins, but I think that this year, the work that you've all done to be flexible under the current conditions has been amazing to me. And I think that testament was Ms. Harrison's calling in and sharing her perspective and going through the process specifically, right? So I'm just incredibly thankful. I know this summer we're going to be offering a lot more than we've ever have for our SPED students. And again, those individual connections that you all made and your department made, which I know took a long time, of calling families, sharing with them the process, sharing with them what summer was going to look like, I think really made a difference. And I actually heard from a parent who emailed me just to let me know how thankful they were for just getting that call. They've never gotten before, and they've attended summer school before for SPED. So I'm just really thankful for that. And just one more thing that I want to share. I'm not sure if I've shared this in a public meeting before, but when I first moved to the United States, my parents were requesting my school district to provide me with supports to learn English, because I knew very, very little English. And I moved to a very wide area in San Diego. And they didn't really have any services for a bilingual student, because they didn't really have a bilingual program. So they put me into a SPED, a full day class, and they identified me wrongly, right? And they did it for many years. And I just want to say that had a huge effect for many years in my life, and in a negative way, right? Not just me individually in my academics, but also in my language and my culture, right? So I think that work that Trustee Smith-Foltz mentioned and that you talked about, Ms. Hardy, that your staff is doing about ensuring we're identifying kids correctly is so important, right? Because I lived it, and I know it took me 10, 12 years to really get out of that mindset of I wasn't enough, right? Or my language was a disability, right? And again, I don't want it to come off as a SPED being at all a negative thing, because I think that it can really make a huge difference for students who need it, right? But for students who don't need it, and it's just a cultural thing, or it's just a disciplinary issue, or whatever it is, right? I think that we always have to do better, especially for educators, which I know can be really difficult when you have 25 kids, 35 kids, or 200 kids, right? And you don't really know how to go through the process or really identify what's correct. So I agree. I think that we need to do more education for our staff, for our community, and I'm just very thankful for the work. So I'll leave it there and just say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. We are ready to go to 2B, Parent Advisory Committee, Universal Guidelines or Guidance and Bylaws. This is PAC is your Parent Advisory Committee. So welcome everyone. Mr. Aurelio, you are up.
Great. And presenting this evening, we have Martine Blake, our Director of Community Engagement, and Marin Trujillo. I think, Marin, are you there? I think I've promoted you. I wasn't sure if Martine or Marin, if either of you wanted to present the slide deck so you control moving forward, or do you need me to present it?
Yeah, if you could present it, I think that would be great.
Perfect. Let me get that up and going. Oops. Excuse you all. Uh-oh. Wait, are you still there? I think I might have lost you all.
No, we're all here. We're watching you.
And Ruben, you have the little tab organizer and everything. Like, how are you lost?
No, this is called our internet in my district office. Just gonna say, this is not, all right, can you all see that now? Are we there?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So what we're sharing this evening are draft administrative regulations for board policy 1220. So administrative regulations are how we put those board policies into play. So you're going to be seeing those information about that. And I introduced Martine and Marin. This is the agenda for this presentation. You can see the what, the why, some of the context, and then the functions of a parent advisory committee, which we do have multiple parent advisory committees within our district. And so we'll speak to those as well. And then obviously the next steps and wonderings and learnings. So I'm going to provide a little bit of context, the why we're here, specifically around this, this work and this body of work. It's really sort of came to my attention about mid-year that we were really had some struggles around just the roles and responsibilities of some of our parent advisory committees and how they function both as a group and how they function within the larger context of a school district. Parent advisory committees have specific roles typically, and you're going to hear more about that. So in our district, we have essentially 4 major parent advisory committees. We have the ASAP, which is that advises on African American student achievement. That also has a really big part to play in the resolution that was passed by the Board of Trustees back in January 2020. We have what's called the CAC, which is the, I can't even think of the acronym in my head. See, I did that thing where we did the ed speak and forgot the actual acronym. Help me out, Marina Martine, the actual acronym for CAC.
The Community Advisory Committee.
Community Advisory Committee, that's it. And that one specifically supports the development of special education plans and works with Kristen and her team. You have the DLCAPs, which is the District Local Control Accountability Plan PAC, and that PAC specifically advises on the development of the LCAP or the plan and how we use our local control funding formula dollars. And then you have the MDAC, the multi-language. Now I'm striking out here, Marin. Help me out.
The Multilingual District Advisory Committee.
Multilingual District Advisory Committee. In many districts, they don't have MDACs. They have what's called the DLAC, D-E-L-A-C. So I know ours is different as in name, but really functions very similarly. And that is a state mandated parent advisory committee. There are only a couple that are state mandated or federally mandated in how we use our federal or state dollars, and those are noted here. So essentially we have these different parent advisory committees, and we found that we didn't have a uniform sort of practice in how, one, they're developed and how are they supported by the district. So that's where it led us to really flesh out this administrative regulation to ensure that we are being consistent in how we apply this to all our different parent advisory committees. And if there's ever future PACs that want to be developed, what is the process in developing those PACs? Because these are some specific student groups we're talking about here. And we know that our district is made up of a lot more than just these. So if there's ever an opportunity to develop a different kind of PAC, we want to make sure we have a process for all of that. So I'm going to turn it over to, is it Marin or Martine? Who's taking it next?
It's me. Thank you.
All right.
So what you have in front of you, so one, let me say the document that backs up this presentation is, I think, 16 pages long, double space, is about 400 lines. There's no way we're going to cover everything today here. So there's a lot of reading that needs to be done. But at the beginning of that document, you see this grounding that informs the board policy 1220 of what constitutes a citizen advisory committee or parent advisory committee. And you see it is developed for a purpose, which is to allow the board to do its job better. And specifically, it is strictly advisory capacity, and their recommendations are not binding to the board. That's the context in which these regulations are being developed. And I just wanted to frame it that way for you. And it's at the beginning of the corresponding document. Next slide. Typically, for a parent advisory committee, it has some standard categories: legal requirements, which are then systematized or operationalized into responsibilities. And then if there are some specific district level responsibilities that go just a little bit above and beyond the legal requirements, you get to flush that out in that category. You also have to think about what constitutes the PAC, the Parent Advisory Committee. So that gets into the language around composition. Then the question about how you become a member. So that brings up the question of elections. And then finally, what support are the parents provided to do their role? Next slide. Every parent advisory committee goes through a journey like this, but we just don't remember that well because when MDAC probably started as a DLAC, like Ms. Aurelio said, started many years ago, they were probably trying to get themselves organized. They were forming. They did a little bit of storming, which means there's a lot of like, wait, where are we going? Why do we exist? Always to the goal of norming and then performing. When the committee is a district, a legally state or federal mandated committee, that storming and forming is a little bit tamer. One, because we have very clear direction about what they're supposed to do and not do. But it is, I want to name, and I wanted to bring the slide to just frame for all of us, that this is normal group behavior. Storming is not a bad thing. Storming is a group of human beings trying to figure out what are we doing and how do we do it well. At some point, you have to move out of storming into some type of plan and implementing that plan. And I brought this up because in doing this work and going deeper into the regulations, in order to hold a parent advisory committee to its responsibility of advising the group, there's a lot of support that they need in order to go from storming to norming and performing. It does not happen by itself. Next slide, please. So what you have here is the key elements of Administrative Regulation 1220. And as you can see, there's lots of sections. I think the numbering here is a little bit off. I think it's 28 in the end. I have highlighted in bold the areas that I think are of most importance and where we really need your support, Trustee Smith-Foltz and Gonzalez Hoy, and the community in helping us define what is the best way to reconcile some of this. So there's some flexibility and some options that can be reviewed. If you go to the next slide, I'll talk about some of the key decision points. So for example, in composition, if we are to develop a parent advisory committee in the future, I've given you some options of compositions, and each option has a domino effect. So for example, if you wanted to create a parent advisory committee and you wanted it to be one delegate per school site, that's one way. You may want to create one that's organized by the board member regions or by high school families. Well, how do you elect someone from a high school family? If there's, can elementary parents participate? Is it just secondary? What if you want to do one by specific cities or municipalities? Who gets to elect them? So there's a bunch of decision points about how do we do this well, and we should put it in writing. Can district staff who are parents serve as parent delegates is a question in the regulations. Following the footprint of the school site council, staff who are parents at a school site are staff first. And so if I'm a teacher at Ford, and a parent at Ford, I am a teacher first in the context of school site council. In the context of a parent advisory committee, it's up for debate. So that's, a decision point. Parliamentary procedures. You two as board members live through parliamentary procedures. I've given two options. One is the Rosenberg, the other one is the simplified Robert's Rules of Order. There are others, by the way. I think it's important that we lock in on one so that everyone understands the protocols and we train people accordingly. And perhaps the one that I think is the most important is this idea about trust and what constitutes a complete cycle of recommendations development. If we can map out a clear path to what is a complete cycle, then we can all be talking the same language. So if I bring to you a recommendation, but I've already done most of it, am I really asking you for your recommendation? Or am I asking you to review? Do I bring a blank piece of paper? Is that what we're saying? And we co-create everything from the beginning? That takes more time, right? And so every choice has an implication. For us, the task is to try to write everything down, these values that we want to follow, so that everyone understands what they are and we all are held accountable to them. Finally is, how do you initiate a PAC? What if I come to a board meeting with 100 parents and say, I would like to start a Latino Parent Advisory Committee? Do I get a Latino Parent Advisory Committee? It didn't come up from the board, so does it matter by number of people? What if it's 2 people? What if it's teachers? So we need to define the protocol for if there is going to be a pipeline for a community-driven process to initiate a PAC, or if we need to do something completely different. And then as we do these regulations, it'll be best for everyone to explore what are the roles, for example, board members in a parent advisory committee. Let's write that down. Let's clarify what the role is and what it isn't so that we all know. What is the role of the staff assigned? What is the role of school principals? One of the missing elements in parent advisory committees is the voice of the school site directly. So what role do they play in this group? So all of that is embedded into this 19-page document. And these are some of the key decisions that, that we're proposing that you help us resolve. And I think the next slide is for Martin.
Yeah, so Marin and I talked a lot about, actually, Ruben, can you go back one? About the specific charges of a PAC. And I just want to pause here to appreciate and really recognize our parents. All the work that goes into their community organizing, grappling over data, asking questions. There's a ton of meetings both with district, outside of district, after they're off work, after they put their kids to bed, or before they put their kids to bed or made dinner. It's a lot of work that they put in to engage in this way. And one of the things that we often hear from parents is an ask to close the loop. So what happens after their recommendations are given? And they also ask for more timeliness in terms of like a clearer process. So the process that I've heard them asking for is really around accountability, wanting very clear expectations from year to year. What are those key metrics that we're focusing on, that we're looking to shift and to move? And they're also asking for transparency. So they want to know, not in April when the budget is getting ready to be prepared, but they want to know throughout the year, how are we doing? How close are we getting? How far are we still? Do we have a very clear strategy that our sites and centrally we're adhering to? So they're, again, just wanted to really emphasize how much work they put into this, and with a clear process in terms of the specific charges of a PAC. We have some systems level work to do, to Marin's point of really supporting them and going from that storming to norming across the board. In order for those recommendations to really have life, to really have breath, there has to be a process to really incorporate them in the planning. As we say, before the cake is baked. They don't want to add the sprinkles. They want to be in the kitchen with us. We need to have a process to do that at the site and the central level. This just empowers them to really engage in a more authentic way at both levels. And then it also really allows them to see their voice and their engagement live in the plans that we develop at the site level and centrally. Next slide. So this next slide is a framework And some of you may have seen this framework before. The City of Richmond, in partnership with Healthy Richmond, hosted a citywide meeting with our parents, community agencies, government agencies, all at the table, really learning about what does it mean to authentically engage community in a way where they're not tokenized or asked for their input and then never see it really realized in the communities that they live in. But how do you engage them in a way where you're grappling with the input that they're giving with the intent to really do something with that input. And so where our PACs live is really in between number 3 here and number 4. So the voice piece is really making sure that, again, that's that continuous progress monitoring, consistently saying, this is our strategy. These are the goals, the metrics that we're focused on from year to year, and getting their sense. Are we getting it right? Where are we missing the buck? So it's a continuous needs and asset assessment or progress monitoring cycle. So what this looks like and what we're messaging to community through that voice or that involvement is you're making us think and therefore act differently about the issue. And that's where they see their voice in the plans, that those site level plans, LCAP, etc. And you can see some examples of what this might look like. And then collaborate is delegated power. And that's our PACs in general, right? We don't have a community advisory board, which I think they've listed here, but our PACs are that for us. And these ARs serve as the template where we write, this is what the system is promising to give you, or the structure for you to do this work and collaborate with us. Next slide.
So in doing this work and going deep into this, sort of what Martin just mentioned, we want to both name and caution everyone that PAC is the highest, one of the highest levels of commitment in terms of family engagement. It is not the only way. So a PAC is, I put here, the most comprehensive way, and it requires deep commitment, follow through, and really strong processes, internal and external, to make sure that people trust the process and that we close the loops. Without that in place, and without the staffing and time dedicated to it, then we're setting each other for failure, both as an organization and the expectations to the parents. So we name it here, just to name that there are other avenues when the board wants to get input from the community. And when you choose, and if you choose to create a new PAC, please understand that that's a highest level. I call it a marriage. That's a marriage. And so this is not a date. This is a marriage. And if you're not interested in that, there are other avenues, such as board subcommittees that live for a certain time, a task force, listening sessions, focus groups, pushing into already established committees to do some listening. Or you can create a parent advisory committee. Like I said earlier before, I forgot I repeated here, is when is a PAC needed is something that is pending in developing in the regulations. What will be the criteria to initiate a PAC? And what will be the criteria for external, such as community and parents, for requesting it? Next slide. And so here's our proposed next steps in the spirit of nothing about us without us. The first one is that we've created something to set the foundation, not to lead it. We want to open up the administrative regulations for public input. That's what we recommend to you tonight. Get feedback from the different parent advisory committees, from the Parent Leadership Council, and members of the public. I do need to name it's highly unusual that we do that for administrative regulations. This is sort of like writing the instructional manual, really way in the back of the office in someone's cubicle. But given the nature of the subject, which is family engagement, we shouldn't do this without the voice of parents. We recommend that we spend some time during the summer for that listening and collection of feedback. Bring it back to you after we synthesize the feedback to give you a final AR 1220, ideally before September, and then implement the new administrative regulations. So implementation means two things. One, they will create the bylaw template. So this is not, if you notice the regulation is not just about bylaws, there's other elements, but combined will create a template that then can be provided to every parent advisory committee, where we would work with each one of them to adopt and take in. We think that this deserves some touch points throughout the year. So we're proposing that in December and again in June, we come back to you and give you an update of how it's going. Yep, I think we're complete.
Thank you so very much. If we could stop screen sharing, perfect, thank you. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do the same process, questions, and then we'll do comments from the public, and then we'll do board comments. My questions and my comments usually go together, so we'll do that. We are at 5:38. The next item, 2C, should be very quick. It's just kind of little announcements from Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy and I, and then we should be able to do it. So let's go. Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, do you have any questions?
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Blake, Mr. Trujillo, thank you for being here and for a great presentation. So from my understanding right now, there's a draft kind of the AR, and it was sent or is being sent to the current parent committees for review and for feedback. And after that, you're both gathering that input and feedback and then either making changes or bringing it as is, potentially back to this committee for kind of like a last read after all of that. Is that correct?
Almost. It's subject to your agreement. If you think that that's a good plan. We have not sent it to them yet. We did send a draft, but we have not created a mechanism to collect input. We wanted to hear from you guys directly first to see if you thought that development phase made sense.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. So yes, I mean, I'm gonna do the same thing, Trustee Smith-Foltz, and give a comment. So yes, I think that parent involvement is essential. I completely agree with you both. And you're right, it is rare for the board to see even ARs, right, to this level, because their ARs are developed by staff, right? We develop policy. But I really appreciate the level of transparency and inclusion that you're both taking in this specific AR, because it truly affects families, right? So our parents. So I completely agree with that. Gosh, I was gonna add something to that. Oh, my only suggestion, and I guess a question for you as well, is, oh, sorry, two things. One, I would love to see the draft, because I don't think that Trustee Smith-Foltz and I saw it. So if you wouldn't mind sending it to us to read, I would love to see it. And then the second piece, have you both looked at potentially other ARs throughout the state that have done this work? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's linked on the PDF. The ARs is linked in there. It's a little, I thought it was a little hidden. So I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the way of.
I think we're gonna need to update the agenda as well, because the slide deck that was just shared to is slightly different than what we posted. So we will update the agenda to include the updated slide deck and the PDF of the draft. I think that'll be, we can get that.
Maybe separate them. The PowerPoint, the only thing that changed is we made it prettier. We went from all white to
right. I know.
No, that's all we did. Because I want to respect the Green Act or the Brown Act in this case. But yeah, so it's a long document, so you can put you to sleep. There's a lot of stuff in there. There is no way to summarize it for you. We could have spent an hour summarizing it for you.
Sure.
You really need to read it. I should name something that we added is that I think is important, is that I didn't highlight here, is the proposal of a parent stipend. It is a very norm in doing our research of other districts. LA Unified, even just recently talking to our CDE, Lisa Borrego at the state, who's working with Tony Thurman. They are working on creating a state level advisory committee for him on the subject, and they're doing stipends as well. So we've looked deeply into ARs. I grabbed a lot from LAUSD and Thomas Unified, just sort of the way it ended, but I looked at Oakland's, SFUSD. They're difficult to find, but we found some of this in there that's there. And of course, it is also the synthesis of a lot of the journey of family engagement that has happened for the last 15, 20 years is also in there in some way. So I would say we also reference ourselves. We don't always have to look outside. Sometimes we have some stuff. Yeah, and it's a draft. I also want to emphasize that. So both typo and ideas, that's why I think it's important that people look at it.
And this type of a stipend, does then that require applications to not have, it'd be great, but 2,000 parents, right, applying, wanting to participate, like how does that work in those districts? I would love to give every parent who wants to participate a stipend.
And
but
just know we're gonna go down a rabbit hole here.
You're right. Okay, well, that's maybe a question for the parking lot for you to consider, obviously.
If I may, just to frame it, whatever the process is, we would put it in writing in AR 1220. It's not every parent that I'm proposing, by the way. It's the parent leaders,
like leadership,
the chairs, and so who spend countless hours, like Martin said, missing dinner with their families, doing this, and it should not be taken for granted. I know we don't take it for granted, and we say that, but it's become a norm, it seems, to do some type of a stipend or monetary compensation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And last question for you. If we do move forward with the process you have proposed, how long do you think that you will need to have a comprehensive conversation with each parent committee to then come back here for the next draft?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm looking at my calendar.
Take the summer,
yeah,
for sure. At least 2 months, and I feel like that's still pretty rough. So, Marin is very realistic in terms of like, we're hoping to have it done by September, just considering the nature of the summer, the amount of reading and input, and I'm sure research that our parents want to do as well, to make sure that, they've done their due diligence. But at best, the summer.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much. Chair Smith-Folds, that was my last question.
Thank you so much, Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy. I was getting ready to jump down that rabbit hole with you. Like, I had so many questions. I was like, oh, okay, they pulled me back. I do have a question. If it's a big document and you say it's a big document, please take it in digestible parts. Like, I don't want to burn parents out and PACs out with trying to do a 8-hour study session on, the universal PAC bylaws and guidance. It really needs to be taken in small chunks, and it needs to be walked to completion. I think one of the problems that we have is that we don't have conversations to completion. We have conversations till the time runs out. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute. So we need to start having those conversations to completion. And that completion is putting it in writing. This is how many people we had here today. This is the topic we discussed today. This is how the majority of that came out. You know what I mean? So we have clear documentation, as not just as a board, but as the district and as our parents can say, listen, there was 15 people that talked about this, or there were 45 people that talked about this, or there were only 2 people that showed up to talk about this. So we need to put this one back in the queue to talk about this part of the chunk of it together. I think it's one of those things that when you guys set that standard, we have to have this many people here to discuss this so it'll be legit. You know what I mean? And then it goes from there. Like, your PACs need to be involved in that. The PACs need to be represented. If not all of their executive board or all of their membership, at least you have a chunk to say, this is where we're going to make sure that this stays legit and it stays where above reproach. Do you know what I mean? Because I really think that PACs have to be involved. They just don't have to feel involved. They have to be involved, and they have to be involved with a clear understanding of what that looks like. Again, I think clarity is our best friend. Transparency is our only thing that we need to make sure we still have. And then accountability comes with that. Clarity and transparency, accountability, it all kind of goes hand in hand. So I appreciate the first look that you guys gave us. I appreciate the summary that you guys gave us. I appreciate your commitment to making sure that all parent and PACs are involved to the degree that they want to be involved in this process. And I just, again, keep staying clear and transparent, and then we will make sure that the accountability is there. It just flows. It flows from that point. I don't have any further questions and or comments. Let's see if we have public comment. Do we have public comment on this?
As of right now, it's Ms. Harrison. Zalon, you're up again.
Thank you, thank you. I feel some kind of way about this. I feel they only did this because they was trying to control assets because we were the new group on the block and the other groups are governed by the state or something else. And we're just left. But Black parents took what we had and developed something we felt our Black children needed. And we don't, like Martine gave that little thing up there, for the where we are and where we want to go. Definitely the other groups I think are maybe at 3 and 4, but asset is still at 0. They don't communicate with us. They lock us out. We're, and when it depends on who's working with us, what we get done. And that shouldn't be that way. We tried to do the best we could to do our stuff like the other groups, but it didn't because of things not wanting to be done by the district. We ended up now everybody's getting their stuff changing, which might be good, may not, but do not leave Black parents to a point where we feel oppressed again in the system. And if the normal things that's supposed to be there were gonna work for Black parents and Black students, we wouldn't have achievement gap and low Black parent engagement. The normal things don't work and we don't fit in that same box with everybody else. We have our own individual needs and our own individual issues, and our children do too. So when you try to fit it and clump it all in a box to say this is what we want because it works for all the educators who already got degrees, you're not giving equity to everybody. And we don't have a law yet, but we're working on it for our group too. Thank you.
Zaylon, I completely agree with you. I've been in the district for almost 3 years, and my first year and a half, I had the pleasure of really working with and learning from ASAT as we were kind of like in that learning phase together. So I think one, the ARs and with ASAT's voice at the table, just considering that you're right, the other groups are governed by a different set of documents. And so in some way, we have a luxury of really having more conversation about what that looks like for ASAT as a PAC that's not governed by state and federal regulation. But on the other hand, Zaylon, you're concerned about making sure that ASAT is treated the same as every group and has the same support as every group, regardless of who's leading the group. I think the ARs will help with that. We are really hoping to do some deep listening with ASAT this year. I think there's a lot, we feel that there's a lot of celebration of ASAT that perhaps we don't lift enough. The resolution for one, I know when I worked with ASAT, I really got a sense to see how much synergy there was in the community around a plan for African-American student achievement. You guys brought a lot of community members to the table. And there were even some funders at the table at some point. I'm not sure if there still are. So I just want to, celebrate that and have that conversation at a deeper level in terms of community-wide, going back to almost like a needs and asset assessment. What's working right now? What's not working? And who can we draw at the table to support ASAT and the district with moving that work forward in terms of African-American and student achievement. So we really hope that this is an opportunity to hear from ASAT and the larger community APACs as well to guide the way that we move forward.
Thank you so very much. Do we have any more public comment? I think I see Ms. Hunter's hand.
Yes. Let's see, Ms. Hunter, you can unmute now.
Hello.
There you go.
I got 1 minute and 24 seconds as the ASAT chair. Should I not be elevated to panel so I can have a discussion of this, or is this just a? I
just want to remind folks we have about 9 minutes left.
Hello.
Dr. Hurst, we have a couple
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Hunter. I think you may be on a double meeting, but we can hear you. We can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm thinking as ASAT chair, I like to be promoted to panel so I can have an opportunity to address this. We haven't discussed this at all.
So Mr. Raylio, why don't we do this? Why don't we take the clock away? And then Ms. Hunter, what we're doing now is it's a first reading, but we don't have a clock on you. So if you would like to make a comment, feel free to make a comment. And then Ms. Blake or Mr. Trujillo, if you want to have that conversation with Ms. Hunter based on her comments, please feel free. Mr. Raylio, if you would make sure to jump in that. We do have 8 minutes. Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, I know that we have another meeting that we have at 7 o'clock, the Crespi renaming. So Ms. Hunter, this is just a first. This is us talking first. This is not a final. This is just a beginning conversation. Mr. Blake and Ms. Blake and Mr. Trujillo, would you agree to that?
Absolutely.
That this is just a first? Okay, so Ms. Hunter, please feel free.
So I want to say, first of all, I'm impressed. 23 pages is a lot. I wish, as a parent of a Black young man who is going to be a grown Black man in society, in a district where, in our meeting with Dr. Hurst right now, he just said that African American students have the highest disparities, that you, Mr. Aurelio, had taken the time to leave a legacy behind of 23 pages of curriculum or a plan so that African American students can get more out of this American education, because it's not happening. I just want to say, I really wish you had done that. This would have swung the whole thing. But I want to say, as a parent of a future Black male, that I understand what you're doing, but I think the way that you're going about it, the optics of it, are something that need to be considered. Right now, Dr. Hurst just asked us about parent engagement, and I had to mention that. I had to mention everything that ASAT has gone through. I don't think that creating an AR, whatever it is, should supersede making sure that parents get what they need for their children. Because while we're doing this, and while you go to Berkeley, my son is an 11th grader who has had no interaction with counselors who will help him get to college as a Black man in this society. But his mother is well policed by the district when it comes to telling me what my place is in order to fight for my son, who is a Black man in this society. I liken what you have done to the Trail of Tears. We see what you're doing, but thank you, no thank you, grab your stuff, go. This is what's gonna happen for you. You're telling us what's best for us instead of asking us. So after reading that document, some questions come up. I'm a little confused. I'm a lot confused. But some things that I want to just bring up are, first, you said that district staff would not be on e-boards, but then you said that the secretary would be somebody from the district staff that would help us set everything up. But then you have an election that includes a secretary. So that part is confusing for me. Also, you talked about elections in the fall or in June, but then you said that later on you referred to just fall. And so my question would also be, if you're doing this in the fall, is it going to be continually in the fall, or is it going to go back to June? Again, things like what we are not, if you're talking to parents with this language, I would caution you to restate that. Because if you're telling parents what they're not, then you're causing parents to be polarized. And I don't think that's what you're trying to do. So I think revisiting that is important. Also, freedom of speech, telling people what they can and cannot say at meetings, that's not constitutional. So I would also revisit that piece as well. And when you're talking about what's going to happen with our parents in July or August or September, in the meantime for ASAP, because we understand and we take the flattery that you've done all this for us. We do. We are flattered. But we also are in a standstill with our district. You all are not responding, and this is not helping. And in the meantime, while you are drafting 23 pages of constriction, students are still suffering. They're still suffering. This changes nothing. All it does is aggravate parents that are trying to fight for their children. That's it. Stop going in back rooms and writing up documents without engaging your parents. You're acting like police. The police were created to catch slaves. Okay, we don't need that policing. We need engagement. We need you to hear us about our children, who Dr. Hirsch just said are performing horribly. African-American students have the highest disparities. I have not heard from you, Mr. Aurelio, or anybody here about how we're going to address that. And I'm new to this game, but I think that your office is academics. So I'm really concerned about that. And I'm really concerned about the effort that you all put into doing this. I see where you're going, but I think that you need to go back and examine how you interact with parents. Because no matter what you're doing here, what the public is going to hear is that you are shutting down elections and rescheduling meetings and not hearing parents and not being clear about budgets. You're treating us the same way, and I'm going to say this for ASAT and African-American parents, because we're the ones that this is really targeted at. Other people are protected by laws, right? Every time we mobilize, there is always a piece of paper that is put down in front of us to say, you can do this, but you can't do that. Don't do this, don't do that. I would think about that, the optics, especially with the data on African-American students. And Mr. Aurelio leaving us in this position, I would highly consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hunter, so much. We're going to, unless anyone wants to comment to that, what we're going to do is we're going to move on. We are going to, Ms. Blake, Mr. Trujillo, you heard the comments. Mr. Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, if you would like to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Smith-Folds. I did just want to respond to Ms. Hunter. I appreciate her comments. Earlier, Mr. Trujillo mentioned that the process, we're really just talking about the process today. Trustee Smith-Folds and I haven't even seen the AR yet, right? So it is at a very infant stage. What I think the recommendation we're going to make today is that Mr. Trujillo and Ms. Blake engage with every committee, including ASAT, quite a bit, right? I think Ms. Blake said that it's going to be a process of 2 months to really bring us the next reading to the academic committee. So I would keep all the concerns that you brought up today and bring them to the conversation that you're going to have with Ms. Blake and Mr. Trujillo so that you all can talk about those details. I think that would be the best next step because I did want to acknowledge, I hear some of the discrepancies that you found. And I think that that'll be a good next step as this is very infant, right, in the process. So there will be quite a bit of space for input and changes and to bring the next draft, which is, kind of the direction that I would recommend. Obviously, that is the recommendation that you both brought to us today. So yeah, and I just wanted to thank you both for starting the conversations with every committee, which I know is going to take quite a bit of time. And we'll be here for support if you need us. And I did see it's 6:01, Chair Smith-Folds. So if you'd like me to, I can make a motion to extend us by 15 minutes. I'm keeping us hopeful because I want to make sure.
So Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, I don't even think we need an extension. I think we're good, but let's do this. I want to make sure that we always talk about policy, not people. Okay. It has to be a standard that we talk about policy, not people. We cannot, as a group that is dealing with 20,000 plus students, 4,000 plus Black students, our 54% Latinx students, we cannot talk about people. We have to talk about policy. We just have to. It's something that we have to become comfortable with, is that we're dealing with policy only. Policy sets the practice. If we have the policy in place, then we're able to hold accountability to the practice. So I just want to say that, Mr. Aurelio, your name came up a lot. It comes with the check, it comes with the position, it comes with the title. But in this committee, we are going to talk about policy, not people. So I want to make sure that we understand that this is a committee that's going to work towards a policy. Are we clear about that, everyone? Like when we come to this table and we're talking about highly charged issues, because all of this is dealing with our babies. I get it. It's dealing with your baby. So you should come with it, with all the smoke. You should come with all that smoke, but you also have to come with the understanding that we got to change. If you want to change the outcome, you got to change the policy, and the people will go with that, but you got to change the policy. We've got to be policy focused on this. So then it will cover our babies for generations upon generations. It's a policy. We're laying down a foundation of creating the equitable policy in our district. So that dismantling of this system has to be done policy by policy. You know what, Trustee Gonzalez, we may need to extend, but it has to be done by policy, by policy, by policy, that we have to dismantle it. So I just want to thank everybody for coming today. I want to thank everybody for speaking your truth and letting your voice be heard, because this is what the academic committee is all about. We are dealing with the babies, and we are dealing with the next generation. And we are all really coming doing our 100%. I really do have a commitment that we all come doing our 100%. And we come, hey, listen, we come for the hard conversations. We come for the hard conversation in soft ways, but we are committed here. I know Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy and I and staff are committed to talk about policy, policy, policy. How do we do the best policy to make sure that our babies are all successful in this system while we dismantle the things that don't work? Because that's what we're here to do. It says the next academic committee meeting dates, August 23rd, September 27th, October 25th. We're gonna say that those are tentative. And let me tell you why. We have a new superintendent, and Dr. Hurst. Oh,
so
yes.
sorry to interrupt you. You jumped the third item on standardized testing. And I think Ms. Blake wanted to say one quick thing before leaving.
Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, that's why we needed to extend. We have a whole nother item. Hot mess. Okay, please extend. Make your motion to extend. I was jumping way ahead. So
no problem.
Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, now I can't even say your name. Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, how long are we extending to?
I'll extend it to 6:20 just to stay hopeful, and so that we can grab a bite to eat before our next meeting.
I would appreciate that. Ms. Blake, please say what you had to say in the comment, because my eyes are getting
Yeah, I put it in the chat. I just wanted to reiterate, definitely heard what Ms. Harrison said. I heard Ms. Hunter as well, and wanted to reiterate that we were going to be doing additional deep listening, specifically around ASAT, also around DLCAP. We went through a much different and more extensive process for DLCAP to develop recommendations this year. And we want to really debrief that and flesh that out more. Similarly for ASAT, they've grown so much over the past few years. And we recognize again that they're not state and federally mandated. And we want to do some listening to guide next steps, and opposed to, directing that for the community to the point that was raised without hearing their input. So just wanted to reiterate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Blake. And Mr. Trujillo, I see your hand up. Go ahead, sir.
Very quickly, and thank you for that framing and of this idea of speaking our truth for the benefit of children. I think Ms. Hunter's brought up a very good point that in the spirit of good faith and speaking my truth, I want to frame. And that's that, I don't need a regulation to tell me, how to love children and do right by them, right? Nevertheless, what this regulation will do is it will systematize what that floor looks like, not the ceiling, but what that floor looks like. If this was a project of fixing your house, and I said this earlier today, fixing bylaws, it was there. It's an issue that needs to be resolved. Is it the biggest issue? No, ma'am, it's not. The biggest issue is that we're not a data-driven organization. That's what we need to fix. If you do this without doing the other, I agree with Ms. Hunter. This goes in circles, right? So did we need to fix this first? Probably not, but here we are. We'll fix it, but we have to fix the other parts as well. We have to close the loops. We have to follow the data that informs our budget decision-making so that people understand how we make decisions. We can't keep telling people that we do something one way and then change it the other way. That's just not gonna work. I'm complete.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Trujillo. I mean, we are having Sunday session up in here today, which is very, very good. I appreciate everyone. Okay, so let me get myself together. Back to the agenda. I got it on this piece of paper right here. Okay, so now we are at 2C, correct? Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, keep me honest. Okay, we are on 2C, which is standardized testing. Okay, Mr. Aurelio, do you have anyone up for, oh, yes, you do. I bet it's Miss Allison. Is it Dr. Huey?
Dr.
Okay,
Huey is
perfect.
here, yes. And really the focus of this one, it's really brief. I think it's 3 slides and it's just an update. I asked Dr. Huey to come and share around the SAT, PSAT primarily. I know standardized testing is a broader term, but really the focus we're talking about is PSAT and SAT. And I will turn it over to Dr. Huey.
Good evening, esteemed trustees, parents and community members who are joining us this evening. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today, and just really, as Mr. Aurelio stated, just provide some information. And truthfully, in the spirit of what this meeting has been about tonight, this is all about transparency. It's about future policy, and it really is likely going to be about dismantling some of the systemic issues that we're facing in education that are providing and perpetuating inequities. So just a small introduction there. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight is something that actually we published about 3 weeks ago in our Friday memo to the board, which you trustees will recall. Several weeks ago, there was a settlement in a court decision, well, a legal proceeding against, unfortunately, the UC system. That settlement basically results in the SAT and ACT not being utilizable as a metric for admission to any of the 10 schools in the UC system going forward. The idea being, I've linked one of the pertinent articles that really lists out all of the details of the case, and I really recommend that anyone interested actually read the article. The gist of that settlement basically stated, and this court case was filed in County of Alameda, that the SAT puts low-income students of color and students with disabilities at a disadvantage. As I stated, the UC system schools will not use SAT or ACT scores going forward. And another related piece of information, it's not part of the settlement itself, but it's something that is an pertinent piece of information that I think the group should hear, is that, since March of last year, which is roughly when we went into the COVID quarantine situation, over 500 colleges have gone into a test optional situation. That number has steadily grown over time. I will say that for our district, we're part of UC Berkeley's Center for Educational Partnerships consortium, which is the East Bay and Solano area consortium. And while the CEP cannot take a stance on this issue, clearly they're related to UC Berkeley, I can say that the general feeling in the wind, and that's all we have right now, is that it is very likely that other California school systems will follow suit and not utilize the SAT or ACT as part of their admissions criteria going forward. This is pertinent because in the past, for at least the past 7 years, West Contra Costa Unified School District has maintained an annual contract with the College Board to give, or to participate, I should say, in the SAT School Day program. So the SAT School Day program requires that school districts give the PSAT and or SAT for entire grade spans within a district. So I can say the last time that we participated in this program was pre-pandemic. We did not participate this past year. But pre-pandemic in 1920, we had a $143,173.50 contract with the College Board to provide an SAT school day administration, which meant that all students in grades 10 through 12 took either the PSAT or the SAT mandatorily as part of the school day. So, you know, we took an entire school day and we issued this test as a mandated part of the school day. College Board doesn't allow you to have an opt-in program as part of the school day experience. All students, it must be offered to all students at a grade span. And the big reason why we wanted to provide you this information is because this is really an opportunity for us to reevaluate and to take stock on whether or not we want to continue participating in the school day program. I will say that if we do decide that participating in the school day program is not something that we would like to continue, that doesn't prohibit us or any of our schools from offering the SAT and or the PSAT as part of the designated school site program. The designated school site program is where students and families select a testing center to take the test on a Saturday, right? So we could absolutely still take part in that program. I think, Mr. Aurelio, there was one more slide. We did send out a survey from the Office of College and Career. We sent it out to school counselors, high school principals, all the directors in the Ed Services Department, and we reached out to our contact for students in the Department of Family and Community Engagement. And we all know it's the end of the year. Unfortunately, we were not able to get student responses at this time. So I do apologize for not having those data for you right now. But I can tell you that amongst the respondents from school counselors, 7 of the 8 respondents indicated that we should discontinue school day programs. 5 out of 8 principals, and I should have, sorry, I'm seeing now that I reported those data incorrectly on that slide, but 5 out of 8, so 5 voted to discontinue and 3 voted to continue. And then 5 out of all 5 Ed Services directors all voted that we should discontinue school day programming. At this point, I'll give it back to Mr. Aurelio. My understanding is that this was an information only conversation so that we can come back to you at a later time.
Correct. Thank you, Dr. Huey. So we will leave that there for you, but that is the decision we're going to be needing to make as we move into the summer around the SAT, PSAT for next school year.
So it's just an information slide, but I do want to see if there's any public comment, just because we always say at the end of any of our presentations, if there's any public comment. Is there any public comment, Mr. Aurelio?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this point.
So Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, because it's an information slide, let's just go to comments, okay? Because we don't want to jam anybody up. You know what I mean, Dr. Huey? So we're just going to go to comments, and then we would definitely like you to come back and be able to take questions after you do get the student information. Would be great. A time to come back after you get the rest of those counselors, because it's the end of the year. Get the rest of those counselors' feedback. That'd be a great time to come back. Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, your comments?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I was going to suggest that for when you come back, Dr. Huey, and thank you for being here in the presentation. If you could bring also some data just around how many students would continue to benefit if we continue the program on a format that you explained, right? On the weekend, not affecting school day. I can't remember at this point if CSUs require SAT still. No, they don't. Okay.
They don't this year, and all indications are is that they will follow suit from the University of California system. We don't have that determination yet, but all indicators are that they will also follow suit. I will also say all of the Ivy League schools have gone test optional at this point in time. Many of the California private schools have gone test optional at this time. If you look at the links that I've provided, especially on the second slide where it says the opportunity to reevaluate and the pros and cons. I've made basically a research review just of the pros and the cons on each side. And those are really good places to start to inform oneself about the issues.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, well, I look forward to the next conversation. I'll pass it back to Chair Smith-Folds because we do have an announcement of an event we're helping put together for next week around testing. So Dr. Hugh, actually, it might be great if you joined us to watch as well. Back to you, Chair Smith-Folds.
So Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy and I are participating in an event around the conversation around testing and the racist history around testing, standardized testing, and specifically these kind of higher level testing. What does that look like? What is the impact on our students? And what are parents, what do parents have? What are the parent options in that? So it's great that we have this slide that you presented us because we can then go back. And what we want to make sure that parents understand is it's not punitive. And this is a conversation that's happening all over the nation about what testing looks like and how are we performing tests and are we doing more harm than good? And what's the lasting impact on students who are not, who this test was not made for. They do not have the resources to be taught to the test or anything of that sort to give them the same equity as someone else taking this test. So we are having that. And Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, keep me honest, the 15th?
Yes, 15th at 6 p.m.
The 15th at 6 p.m. and they can catch it on Facebook. Right.
Oh gosh, I should have prepared. We have a flyer. We will post it on our social media in case people are interested. I believe it is going to be on Facebook Live. And we do have an amazing panel. It's being led by our director of OASA, Mr. Director McGee. And we have board members from WCCUSD as well as Oakland. So it should be a great time.
And please tune in and find out more information. Dr. Huey, I am still in your slide. I took a picture of it. I was like, boop, take that. So I'm going to make sure that we talk about that. Zalon, Ms. Harrison, I do see your hand up and we have enough time. Zalon, I'm going to take your comment real quick, but before we do, I'm just going to run through real quick. Mr. Raylio, make sure we get back to Zalon. Next academic subcommittee, committee August 23rd, September 27th, October 25th. Keep us tentative. We are tentative because we are waiting for the direction of our new superintendent. We are making sure that we are setting everyone up for success. So he's having an opportunity to look at the way that we have our processes and our organization, and he will be making recommendations to that point. So we hope to see you guys back, but if we don't see you in this form, we know we'll see the conversation in another form because he is very dedicated to making sure he continues these academic focused conversations with our community. Future agenda items, let's hold just in case we get back, but we will. If you have a future agenda item, please email it to Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy or I, and we will definitely put it up for that August meeting if we're going to do it. When I say definitely, I mean relax. We'll try to get everybody in, but if not, we'll get you in September or October. Zalon, you are up, and then Zalon, we have like less than a minute, but I got you. Go ahead and say what you need to say, and then we'll adjourn.
I just wanted to say thank you, Dr. Allison, for that information, and something to what Trustee Foles said. That is a process that doesn't have equity, and if you guys can put that information where parents can find it, like what's coming up, like the other trustee, I also used to call you Demetrio. So sorry, the trustee said that we need to, can you put that and give that to the parent groups? That's what I was wanting to ask. Can y'all give that? Because that is a big issue. My kids that went to college, and just knowing if that process needs to happen, how we need to support our kids. And I definitely want parents to know about the panel. Thank you. That's all.
I really think that we need to really highlight this issue, Dr. Allison, because we need to take the pressure off of kids. You can apply to these schools. These schools are for you. You are able to go to college and no barriers are going to be put in your place because we are, again, a district that's focused on dismantling. Okay, we are 6:21, Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy. I'm gonna try to get it together. Everyone, please join us for the 7 o'clock meeting of the Juan Crespi renaming. You will find that on the district website. Keep me honest, it is on our district website to get to the Zoom link, correct? Okay. Thank you so much for everyone for coming. I really, really appreciate it. Mr. Aurelio, thank you so much. We really appreciate you and good luck in Berkeley. You will be missed. Dr. Huey, thank you. We had Marin and Martine. Thank you very much for coming. We had Ms. Hardy and Steve Collins. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you to Dr. Hurst for coming. Please, everyone know that he jumped off to go to a parent meeting, and that is okay with us. He is a man with has many hats. Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, anything else?
Nothing left, Trustee Smith-Folds. I was just wondering if you and Mr. Ailey could stay for a second to check in about the next meeting, and we can just wish a good night to everyone else. I'm not sure if we need to kick anyone out, but
oh no, that's perfect.
just so we can chat.
They're already
Thank you,
dropping
everyone.
off. We are adjourning. Thank you so very much.
Thank you,
Y'all
everyone.
go enjoy your dinner. We are